everyone, and welcome to the 20th show of The Voice of the Veteran, the #1 show in the entire nation for firsthand veteran experience. My name is Gayle Ocheltree, Army Airborne veteran for crying out loud, along with my friend Nicholas Cormier III. There he is. Say hello, Nick.
Hey, Nicholas Cormier. Welcome
Cormier, what did I say? I'm screwing up everything today. I'm so sorry. And of course, our producer in the back, MC Franklin, is keeping everything on track for us. I appreciate you showing up today. Thank you so much. All right.
Glad to be here. So glad to be here.
MC.
We're going to have a fun show, even though we have heavy topics to discuss today. We ought to get combat pay for what we do on this show. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe there's a diagnostic code and it's a claimable thing. I don't even know, but we'll figure that out later. So, welcome to the 20th show. I just came from my 50th class reunion from high school, from my boarding school, Monterey Bay Academy, and I'm telling you, it was heavy. I mean, seriously, I was crying away just moments ago. I have no military bearing today, so I'm going to ask my buddy Nicholas for help. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm going to tell you today about is that, look, if you're looking for your military records, just get out a pencil and take some notes, or maybe you want to tattoo this on your body somewhere, because retrieving military records involves several different agencies. Hello, Kathy Cash. I hear you out there. Good for you for joining the show. I see your little note to me on the screen. I love that woman, Dr. Kathy Cash. That's right.
Dr. Kathy Cash.
That's right. I know you know her too. That's right. I forgot that. So unless, of course, your records were burnt up in the St. Louis fire in July 1973, that's an entirely different process. But what I want to talk to you about today is that if a veteran's STRs, or service treatment records, are located in the RMC, Record Management Center, and then they go over to the RO, or the regional office, and they create what's called an E-folder for the veteran in the Veterans Benefits Management System, which is VBMS. You getting all this down? Okay, the RMC does not send the STRs to the RO. You got that? They don't do that. Instead, they send the veterans' STRs to a vendor that actually digitizes and scans those STRs and uploads them into the veteran's E-folder. Okay, you got all this down? Am I talking too fast? The process for transferring the STRs from the RMC to the RO changes as the RO has begun processing claims in a paperless kind of environment. Now, instead of shipping the STRs to the RO, the RMC sends them to a scanning vendor. And once scanning is complete, the vendor uploads the electronic copies of the STRs into the appropriate veterans E-folder. Okay? Now, the company that does this scanning is called HIMS, H-A-I-M-S, right? And that is the DoD's Healthcare Artifacts and Images Management Center. Seriously, this is all true. Trying to give you accurate information here. Now, once the RMC receives the records, they enter that into what's called SMARTS, okay? So that is the Service Medical Record Tracking System. And that is an electronic search. Then an electronic search is made from there into the BURL system. Now, BURL stands for burial stuff, and we can go into that later, but that just takes us off on another path entirely. I may need BURLs after trying to study all this. It's incredible. Now, did you get all that, or do I need to repeat any of it, Nicholas? Do you think? No, I think we're good so far. So they have a chart for all this with all little pictures and arrows going around in every direction, you know, so you can figure out what goes where, and you submit a form and it goes to this building, then it goes over there. It's crazy. There are different types of records housed in different agencies and in different locations. It's crazy, but they can all be requested through what's called PIES. Now, PIES is Personnel Information Exchange System, and that is why you may want to get some help from a VSO or a veteran service officer, because they're trained in how to try. They have the picture of the page with all the little arrows and everything, and they can show that to you in their office. So that's all I have to say on the tracking of your military records, because that's just the basic part of how it works. There's even way more to it than that. Nicholas, I am overwhelmed sometimes studying this stuff.
That's a lot, but it's a lot of stuff. I guess in layman's terms, I know as a veteran, my service treatment records are something that are always on my mind. And I know when I first got into the VA system, it was something that was spoken to me, is to consistently check those records, always go back to see what's in my records. And this stuff starts to make sense and starts to, you know, get me thinking, because it's like service treatment records. Of course, I'm thinking STRs. Wasn't I tested for that last week? But that's service treatment records. It's important to review those and actually check those. So I learned to go back and double check my service treatment records to make sure that what's in there is what I think it's in there, and also challenge things that are in there that shouldn't be in there.
That's very wise.
Veteran to veteran, that's just something to put out there for other veterans. Always go back and check those STRs, your service treatment records.
Now, somebody asked me the other day, oh, look at pie, how funny. Yeah, pies. Somebody asked me the other day, how do I get copies of my hospital records at the VA? Now, that's not military records. That's the hospital records at the VA. And that's information resource management. And every hospital at the VA that I've ever gone to has a building or a room in the hospital. You say, hey, where do I get my VA treatment records? And they will direct you to that office. You fill out the form. Sometimes you can get something really simple right then and there. Other times they send it all home. You can get a CD.
That's what I've gotten. I've gotten a CD. I have that CD, exactly. I've gone, I think for me at West LA, I don't think it's done at the West LA VA anymore. I think it's now at Sepulveda is what I'm thinking, but don't quote me on that. But I did get a CD of all of my hospital records, which becomes important when you're writing a claim or putting forward a claim for your benefits. Now, when you say service records, Gayle, are you talking about like active duty when you're in kind of records?
Oh, I got something for you. Listen to this crap. So when we're talking about guys that are in combat in the field, let's see, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Coast Guards are all on CURS system, C-U-R-R-S. And don't ask me because I can't remember exactly what that stands for right now, but I know what it is, but it's going to take me longer than I have here to remember it. And the difference is that the Marines have their own combat record service separate from everyone else's. So if I'm dealing with a Marine at the VA, as far as being a VSO, I don't want to send a Marine's, 526 application EZ through the CURS system for information. I want to make sure that I access or help them to access, better yet, the Marine system for getting their primary investigative information regarding their combat experience. Did that help, or did I just ramble on too much?
I don't really know.
No,
I was in the Air Force. I didn't know.
No, but the rest of us are on one system. The Marines have their separate system for their combat, experiences and stuff. So, it's things like that. I think the more that veterans, I know you're going to agree with me on this, because I think the more that veterans are involved, and clearly you are, in researching the different ways to get records, the easier it is for the, the claim process to go through. They always want like a 2-month window. If there's any kind of an incident, if you could tell them where, and within a certain 2-month window, it seems like they've always been able to find it with that kind of thing going on. So That's important.
Well, hopefully, you know, I've heard all kinds of horror stories about records being burned on ships and all kinds of things, and not being able to go back and get those service treatment records. However, for me, thankfully, you know, I was able to put forward my claim without that, just using the hospital records. But I do know veterans who absolutely have to go back and request all of that information.
Oh, God. And then there are also the things that are presumptive things, you know, like these days, you know, you do get asked like 22 different things to prove Agent Orange claims, but there are things that they believe people, it's presumed, it's presumptive, and they'll go on from there. We have a couple of subjects today that I think are going to fall into that kind of a category, presumptive claims. So I just wanted to mention that because, you know, I think, too, that veterans come in and they think that they have to tell the VSO all the details of everything that happened. And quite frankly, the VSO is there to help them organize the paperwork and get started. And there's a general statement form that the veteran takes and then tells all the details, and it's reviewed that way. The therapists are to listen to the entire story. VSOs are trying to help pull everything together. I mean, that's at least how I see my job, you know. And it isn't like I don't want to hear or talk or be friendly with someone, but my job is to help them get paperwork written up, you know. So, you know, that's what we're there to do. So I'm thinking that we've got a great guest today.
We sure do. We sure do.
Yeah. Women vets on point. And if I'm incorrect, she will correct us. You want to introduce her?
Yes, yes. Our very special guest with us today on Voice of the Veteran is Rocio Palmero.
That's right. There she is.
Hello, Nicholas. Hello, Gayle. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great now that you're here.
Yay. It's always a party. The party is wherever we are at. So
that is right. That is right. Absolutely. Hey, why don't you tell us, just go right for it. Why don't you tell us about WVOP, right? And, you know, and what is it? And, you know, what is it? How did it get started? And that kind of stuff. Just go for it for a little bit.
So I want you to know that I'm really thankful to be here, and I just want to thank both of you, and I thank you for this opportunity. I am a Navy veteran, 2 years on active duty, 12 years reserves, and as a Navy veteran, it's been really difficult, right? It's a challenge always try to find the right kinds of organizations, especially being a woman veteran, because it's always an assumption that they're looking for the guy, right? They're looking for my husband when I go in for veteran services. WVOP stands for Women Vets on Point, and we are a department within U.S. Vets. U.S. Vets was actually established in 1992 and opened its doors for the first time in 1993. Steve Peck, who is our CEO and president of U.S. Vets, he saw the need for a program that was specifically for women, the increasing homelessness of women, the increasing needs of women. And so it was actually established 3 years ago. And we were able to provide mental health counseling for women, as well as homeless advocacy, homeless referrals, and even employment opportunities. And what's been really great is that since the pandemic hit, we have been able to help women, not just locally in Los Angeles. We've been able to help women up and down the coast of California. And even recently, we had someone that we were helping in West Virginia. So that's always exciting because being a woman doesn't change where you are. It doesn't change. We're still women and we're still veterans and we're still in need of services. And so being able to find someone that can help you or put you in touch with an organization maybe closer to you, the right organization to support your needs and help to provide that support that you need. So that's
really cool. You know, Nicholas and I are both on a committee right now with Steve Peck, so we know him pretty well. You know, so yeah, he does a lot of really good work. Certainly, you know, with homeless. I mean, for years, his dad, Gregory Peck, you know, the actor Gregory Peck is his dad. And I spoke at when they opened the new apartments in Inglewood with his dad and met him. And what a wonderful guy he was too. And Steve was just like a kid back then. You know what I mean? And he's a vet. He's a vet, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more. And Nicholas, jump in anytime you want to if you think of something that you want to ask her about services. I want to drill down on that a little bit about now, you know, even the fun stuff. Tell me a little bit just for the fun of it. I attended a bingo night the other day. And, you know, I'll never win anything. You know, nothing. I'm telling, no, you look at you rolling your eyes, and I am telling you, I never, ever win anything. And we got on this thing, and go ahead, tell them about it. Tell them what happened.
So here's what's really great is that women, little girls, I saw a study once that little girls' vocabulary by the time we're 3 have increased. It's multiplied. It's so much higher than our male counterparts at that age. And it has nothing to do with intelligence. It's just the way we're wired. It's just the way our brains are wired. So needing that, another advantage that's noticed very young with children, with little girls, is the need to be social. And studies have shown that, I know we're going to go into our subject, but this actually just kind of hits on that women who are triggered, who are dealing with PTSD or MST, are triggered differently than men. And one of the ways that to overcome that is for women to have more social environments, more environments where we're being supported, where we're talking with other women. And that's why we started these events. And so we had a great St. Patrick's Day event, and someone said, you know, I wish we had more of these events because we don't have where she is up in the high desert. They don't have those events. So we started this bingo night, and I could not believe bingo is like something they play in the church directory, right, on a Saturday night. These gray-haired women with these little dolls and trying to make sure that they're, you know, nobody touches their area so that their luck is not infected or touched. And we had this amazing bingo night. It was our first bingo night, but it won't be our last bingo night. And I roll my eyes when Gayle mentioned that she never wins anything, because Gayle won three games in a row. So we had these warm-up sessions, and then we had like the actual session, and she won 3 times in a row. And I said, you need to put that up on your singles, like your singles profile or whatever, on whatever, you know, platform you are. She won 3 times.
Take me to Las Vegas.
Well, Dr. Cash, who's on here right now, obviously one of your big fans, Dr. Cash is notorious for always winning. Like back to back.
I kicked her butt. Yeah.
You did. I was in shock, actually. I was just in shock. But yeah, Dr. Cash, I was like, I got to take her to Vegas and sit next to her because she's always winning. You know that song, All I Do Is Win, Win, Win. It's Dr. Cash's.
That's right.
It's Dr. Cash's theme song because she's always, you know, winning. So it was great to see you come in as a newcomer. You have fun with the other women. You won 3 times. And then a follow-up email from you was, hey, I have this friend who would love to be part of bingo night. And I thought that's probably the most flattering form of kudos of how well that event went when somebody recommends someone else.
Well, I have to tell you, because the guys will know. I know Nicholas and Franco, our MC back there, both know her. It was Kimberly Morrow that I referred to bingo night. So, you know, it's like, yeah, let's bring them all in. Everybody that loves everybody. You know, she'd be great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so that's what we try to do. We just try to come in together into a safe environment. We acknowledge each other's service, you know, everything that, you know, our time in, because it's just an unspoken energy when you're around another veteran, especially a female veteran. You know, we understand each other's struggles and needs a little bit better than our male counterparts, as hard as they try. It's just you're not a woman, and so we had just an amazing time of just hanging out and playing bingo. And it was ridiculous bingos. And then what's blackout bingo? And then we did an experiment with blackout bingo. I think that was the funniest thing. You can't play blackout bingo. Blackout bingo is when you hit every single square. But guess what? When everyone's hitting every single square, everybody's winning. Like everybody's like, bingo.
It It was crazy. Hey, well, let me do this because I know we've got this subject that I've been avoiding for weeks. And you know how the VA has a campaign and every month they address different issues. And it's really important that we address this issue. And we're not going to tell a bunch of sad stories or anything like that because it's horrific what goes on. But we're going to talk about military sexual trauma, and we're going to discuss all the resources and the various things that we want to know about that subject so that we can get that information out and be supportive of both male and female veterans. Now, military sexual trauma, I want to define right up front, is not necessarily just between two military people. It could be a civilian on the outside or a civilian contractor or a local person in the community where the veterans went to a party or something and got in trouble, you know, with, you know, other people that they didn't know or something like that. And that is also called military sexual trauma. Now, I went to the Arizona Coalition for Military Families. It's their 11th annual statewide symposium this last Thursday. And I went to 2 breakout sessions in one day. One was on military sexual trauma, and the other one was on suicide prevention. So my head was mush by the end of the day. I was taking notes and trying to, you know, and so I want all 3 of us to have just a chat about our experiences or thoughts about this. And I'm going to put links up in the chat box and do that. So let's just start in because, you know, I've learned that, you know, a lot of things about this subject in the last few days. So if either one of you have anything at all that you want to bring up as a thought to start with, you just go right ahead. Because, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the symptoms involved with military sexual trauma. You know, there's PTSD and anxiety and eating disorders, drug and alcohol. Just break in anytime. You guys want to say anything about this. We just have to talk about it on some level. And I'm already nervous about it, you know.
Well, I mean, I think that I guess segues into the big thing. There's a stigma attached to talking about military sexual trauma. And that goes, you know, I know from the male veteran point of view, there's a stigma attached to it. And, you know, my fellow veterans, you know, have shared things with me that, of course, are horrifying. And I know we're not getting into that right now, the details of those things. I wouldn't do that. But it just goes to show it's not an easy topic to discuss, but it's absolutely necessary to discuss. And I'm glad that we're having space here for that discussion.
So thank you for saying that. The bigger thing is that, you know, since 9/11, we had an increase in people being activated and joining the service. And so we're having an increase of people who are reporting some of the things that have happened. And I'm so glad that we're mentioning men. We ignore the fact that men too can be victims of military sexual trauma. And I want to be careful when I use the word victims and survivors, right? I feel like victims are the ones that have not been able to seek out the help or have not been able to overcome a lot of things. And the survivors, I feel like, are the ones that have come on the other side. And now we can come back and help support and advocate for services. And, you know, it's unfortunate. It's coming mainstream. We're hearing more and more about it. We're seeing more and more about it in the news. But the other thing to also consider is that because we're having these conversations, that's, I think, the most important thing is to have these conversations and to understand that, yes, these things happened on active duty, but I think that the VA is doing a really great job and a lot of organizations are holding them accountable for bringing counseling services, having talks, having symposiums, and providing those services that need to be to support our veterans who are dealing with this. And there's a lot of side issues, right? There's a lot of other things that come with military sexual trauma. And you know, military sexual trauma, I love the way you defined it, Gayle. It is a term that's used by the VA to refer to experiences of sexual assault experienced by a man or a woman during military service. So that, I think by pointing that out, we acknowledge that the assailant doesn't have to be military. The person who's experiencing experiencing it has to be military. And so having said that, we're finding a lot of our homeless women who are veterans are dealing with that, are surviving that and have not been able to overcome that at a greater instance than the male counterparts. We have additional PTSD is actually, I think, diagnosis, and then there's secondary diagnoses, right? That then become dual diagnoses, and I'm making a big deal about this because in order to really understand what you're going through and what some of our other veterans are going through, it is so important to define that. A secondary diagnosis is when somebody has an additional diagnosis, right? But it's not the main diagnosis. When it becomes a dual diagnosis, that means that it's an equal struggle, right? It's an equal thing that needs to be addressed. And we're seeing schizophrenia, and we're seeing depression, and we're seeing even physical reactions where people are having gastrointestinal issues, or their skin is breaking out in boils and rashes, or their immune system is repressed, right? Because it's causing so much of a stress. And as much as in your mind you're saying, I'm just going to deal with this, we're seeing that your body's like, no, something else needs to be done. So kudos to a lot of our organizations, our fellow organizations. U.S. Vets, obviously, we're in it for mental health. We're in it to support everyone with mental health issues, but we're also in it to help our female veterans with shelters and our male veterans with shelters. Additionally, we have partners. We have, there's so many different other nonprofit organizations that are working on that. You had VPAN on with Christina Garcia.
Christina Garcia, that's right.
Yeah, with Christina Garcia, where VPAN is really making an impact in helping veterans with that, with mental health issues, supporting their mental health issues, and or bringing them that help, and also bringing light to that. And then there's the crisis hotline. I did speak to someone recently who said that that was their first person that they ever told what had happened while they were on active duty. They couldn't bring themselves to talk to anyone else. And so again, that's what's really great.
Right here, real quick, I wanted to mention something. If veterans, I learned something in the symposium, that's what you're talking about. If veterans are never asked the question, if something like this happened during their military service, when you see all these little anxiety and hypervigilance and all these things that go on, they'll answer the question back and forth quite often, but they won't offer it. So that's why it's so important that we just talk about it and make it not have such a stigma. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. I just wanted to put that in.
That's great. That's such a great point, because you're kind of in the military, you're kind of taught to suck it up, right? Like no matter what happens,
suck it up, buttercup.
Keep it going, and it's going to be fine. And without going into too much detail, because I'm proud to be a Navy veteran, as I know you're proud to represent your branches as well. I don't want to say anything demoralizing, but just things could have been handled better when it comes to MST. And because things are not handled better there, veterans are coming out with a lot of these issues. And so the whole idea of being quiet, of just like not talking about it, or did that really happen, that's really, really difficult. I mean, when we look at the numbers in 2019, we had 15.78 million male veterans, as opposed to only 1.64 female veterans. But yet the number of female veterans dealing with MST is so much higher. And so how do you balance that out when you have such a small number? And you and I are going to be speaking at the VA open house on Friday.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up, because I forgot to even bring that up. Good for you. Thank you. Jeez.
I've got my notes, Gail. I've got my notes.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. I need help.
Barbara Walters taught me to always have these notes.
Oh, I wanted to give you a stat that I have. Since you're already talking about this, this goes with exactly what you're saying. I have a note here that 1 in 3 women veterans and 1 in 50 male veterans have told their VA provider about experiencing MST. That's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 50 men. So it affects both. Like you said, there are more women that, have this issue going on, but whoa, that's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And look at the disparity. So then the percentage of women overall who are experiencing it is much higher than the overall number of men that are experiencing it, because we are such a smaller group. And I always say that being a female veteran is we're a minority of a minority, right? Because there's a lot of, right? And so, but yet, so then you would think these issues would be on the forefront. They would be further out in the forefront, and they're not, because we're such a maybe a tight-lipped community where we don't talk about these things more. But thankfully, unfortunately and thankfully, mental health is coming up, right? Mental health, we're hearing about mental health, we're supporting mental health. I'm seeing the billboards, I'm seeing everything, and I think that that's another reason why we're able to talk about MST now, because we know that just because you can't see the wound on the outside doesn't mean that there's not a wound there. And accepting mental health and accepting these other things that come with MST is so important. And can you imagine if we're able to talk about these things more, how much that'll lower people having their children taken away because they can't keep a job because they keep getting triggered, or women, or just generally the population, where we're able to get that medication. It's not taboo to ask or receive that medication or take that medication. You don't have to.
Speaking of that, the medication is covered. Therapy is covered at the VA for anyone experiencing MST trauma. It's covered. Anybody. There's no co-payments, no medication. And I also want to talk about therapy because Nicholas brought up CBT. I'm going to put this in the chat box right here. There's cognitive behavioral therapy treatment. And then there's the, how do you say it, Nicholas? Dialectic?
It's DBT, also dialectical behavior therapy.
Yes. That's some of the things that go on. I put up several links in the chat box there for contacts and things. If you have
I also wanted to say, I just feel compelled to say, I know from a male point of view, being a male veteran and having served along with, men, and also experiencing being at the domiciliary, also being there, I know that the reporting process, there's also that stigma, there's that whole machismo, masculine thing we got going on and everything. And I know there's a lot of male veterans out there who may not have reported something like that. And you know how it is. Some of that stuff gets handled after you get out a different way. You know what I'm saying? And I just wanted to say that because I don't know. Of course, I know the numbers there, but I'm just wondering how many men are really feeling comfortable going forward reporting that because of, the stigma, which I think males and females are experiencing and have experienced in the past with going forward while you're in reporting military sexual trauma.
And but see, that's just it. I think that a lot of military personnel are less likely to report it while on active duty. So that kind of makes it harder. When people come off of active duty, they're not as likely, veterans are not as likely to start talking about it, right? Because that transition period is so challenging. It's so pivotal, right? To go from active duty to civilian life. Yes. And so that's up in the background. If you had your leg blown off by a dirty bomb, up in the sandbox, everybody can see that. So everyone can talk about it, and it's treated differently than somebody is having a hard time getting up. Somebody is dealing with an anxiety disorder. Somebody is having issues with their relationships because there are barriers that are created when you're trying to suck it up. I just think of putting your finger in the dam, trying to keep the water from coming, but the pressure is overwhelming and it's going to affect you. I know that there was one study that was done. This was an older study. It's from 2016. And it talked about among male veterans, it was 386,000 male veterans had experienced sexual dysfunction, right? And when they started investigating and asking why, it was because 11% of them were reporting, 11% of 368,000, which is like, wow. Yeah, we're reporting that they had some kind of instance of sexual trauma that they had not talked about. So that was only because they were dealing with their sexual dysfunction. Like that, are we going to take medication? What kind of medication are you going to have to take? Because most of these men were younger. So how funny that you weren't talking about it until it affected another area of your life.
And I think, I think for me, just being a veteran, say even being in the Air Force, right? There's a stigma attached to that. So I know for a long time, I didn't even realize I'm a veteran because I'm like, well, you know, everybody else, well, the Marines are veterans, Army's veterans. I mean, I was Air Force, you know, and so it took me even a while to see what was going on with me and being able to put forward claims and even deal with that from that perspective. So I can only imagine what it's like for veterans who've experienced military sexual trauma to go forward and report.
Yeah, Nicholas, that makes, and it's not just you. As a matter of fact, WVOP is having, we have groups, and we've kind of sat back, we did these surveys, and we said, okay, how can we help you? How can we help our female veterans? How can we support our female veterans? What is it that you're looking for? So we got surveys back. So we've changed our groups. We have Wellness Wednesday where we talk about overall health, right? We have on Thursday evening is going to be our recreation night. So that's going to be our bingo nights. That's going to be our, because that's part of self-care, right? We're going to have our bingo nights. We're going to have our, you know, we have the Armed Forces Day coming up on a Thursday. And then we might throw in a Zumba class. We might throw in a yoga class. I know. And so we're going to be doing all these things. And so that's fantastic, you know, and Friday we're going to be doing our network nights. But I am actually going to start, it'll be probably the first Tuesday, because it's coming up in May. We're going to start doing Tuesday is going to be transitional Tuesdays. And what we're going to talk about is that transition. Nobody talks about it. Nobody realizes how rough it is. I remember getting off of active duty in San Diego in 1994. And I went to the VA, but the VA San Diego, it's like so inundated, right? Because you have the Navy, you have Marines, you know, you have those big bases down there. And so they didn't have time to talk to me. I was 19 years old. I was 2 years active, 6 years reserves, right? That was my enlistment. I wound up serving 14 years altogether. And people just looked at me like, get away from here, little girl. Go home. Go home, little girl. That's what I felt that they would talk to me. So when I went to trade school and I was trying to do my resume, I had and I know she wasn't being malicious, but she said, you know, keep your military stuff off. There's no place for it here. Now, having been in workforce and having to do resumes for people, I would never dare say to someone, especially not my brother or my sister, don't bother putting that on there. We'll reword it. We don't need to know that you launched airplanes, but customer service, I'm sure you had to keep inventory control. I'm sure that, you know, you were responsible for all the, you know, I know how to word it because I was on the inside. And I just remember crying when she said that to me, like it contradicted everything I knew. I went home and I said, well, I thought I was a big deal because I was a veteran. I was in the military. I was willing to give my life for this country. And you're telling me to completely keep that off my resume?
Well, it's like a slap in your knowledge of what yourself is all about. You've trained to do this. I remember in the 70s or in the 80s, I was at LAX. And everybody was, I had my uniform on. I just graduated from jump school. I was all kinds of ready to go, you know. And I'm telling you, I was walking across the crosswalk, and there was this little girl with her mother. And she said, what is it she's wearing? And the mother said, oh, she's a Girl Scout leader. Oh, I know. I was like, I said, no, actually, now I'm in the Army. She goes, oh, I didn't know. A Girl Scout leader, you know, I don't know. I don't know what their uniform looks like, but mine was way hotter.
Not that there's anything wrong with being a Girl Scout.
No, certainly not.
There's nothing wrong. But guess what? There's also nothing wrong with being a female veteran, and especially your accomplishments having been, you know.
You know what, female veteran? You know what, female veteran? I'm going to have to start cutting you off slowly because we've got some other things that we want to do on this show. And what I want to do is say, can you come back? Because, I mean, you are just a wealth of information. And I just love listening to you talk about your organization and everything. And I hope you will. I hope you know, that you'll come back and chat it up with us some more. You've really helped on discussion of military sexual trauma today. You helped me because I was avoiding doing it. I admit it, because I just didn't know how to approach it until we all talked about it with Nicholas, talked about it with the producer, you know, MC Franklin, and you. And everybody says, let's talk about resources and how to identify it rather than, you know, make it such a horrific topic, you know, make it easy to talk about. So that's what we've done today. And I'm really proud of our conversation today, and that I'm not on the floor, you know, going, oh my gosh, you know, this is so heavy, I can't possibly address it, you know, kind of thing, because that isn't the way we want to leave it. So what do you think? Do you have anything else for
I just wanted to, of course, thank you, Rocio, for being here, and also for enlightening us about transition as well, and for your focus on transition, because I know it would have helped me a lot as a veteran. You know, when there's that whole idea of service freely rendered, and I know a lot of us that have served our country served because we wanted to sacrifice for that. And so, but that doesn't end there. And it's good to know there's a hand extended on the other end as we transition out of service to welcome us back home and to guide us back into wherever we're going to end up or wherever we want to go. So thank you so much for being here, Rocio, and for your focus in that area of transition and everything else you're doing.
Very well said, Nicholas. I agree. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You come back. We'll talk some more. We'll talk some more today.
Again, it was women vets on point.
Yes, I'll go ahead. If I can put my information on the chat, that would be fantastic.
Oh, please do. We're going to go ahead with another story, and you just do that. And I look forward to talking to you as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. All right. Hey, so next up, we have a feature on military brats, for crying out loud. Born, raised, and trained. That's what that stands for. We want to honor them. And Nicholas is going to tell us all about that stuff. You guys just go for it.
Well, just up top, you know, our great producer, MC Franklin, is a military brat, and so am I. And it is Military Brats Month. And we would like to do something to commemorate that and just bring that to the forefront on Voice of the Veteran. And we're going to celebrate that today here. And brats, of course, born, raised, and trained, as Gayle said, but also a little bit more about it. In 1986, former Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger set aside April as the month of the military child to recognize unique challenges children in military families face, also known as military brats. They spend their childhood sacrificing short-term relationships and time with immediate, important family members due to the distance they live apart and the number of times they transfer assignments. They bear a difficult burden that may not always be easy to understand. At times, some lie awake at night enduring the same operational deployments as their parents. These children are expected to support the same missions as their parents, simply by understanding the facets of military life. Parents should also be honored for instilling in their children what military service means, along with the values of selfless service and sacrifice that go along in a typical military career. They move sometimes 10 times more while growing up with military families, 3 or 4 more times than civilian counterparts. Being a military brat is a badge of honor, worn by kids who have traveled the world with their parents, with some even following the family tradition of military service as adults. They experience different cultures and languages from around the world. Brats share the same strengths, which begin early with having the power, strength, and experience to face and tackle just about anything. The official military brats flower is the dandelion. How appropriate is that for brat, B-R-A-T. B, braves down roots anywhere. R, resilient and hard to get rid of. A, adapts and survives in various climates and locations. T, tenacious little thing that always comes back. So for just 1 month, everyone can think of what it must be like enduring the life of a military child by imagining the walk in their shoes. Thank you, MC. Thank you, Gayle, for honoring military brats this month on Voice of the Veteran. And thank you to the military brats who are way stronger than we get credit for.
That's right. Actually, I got goosebumps, honest to God. I'm not just joking and being funny. I just was sitting there going, wow. You know, when you showed that dandelion and you think about blowing it out into the breeze, you know, and seeing it just go exactly just in every direction, you know. I mean, leaving your friends, leaving your school, leaving the things that you know and adapting to something new. They're an amazing group of dependents that we drag along with us, you know, through military experience. I want to shift to another subject here, and I want to ask you, Nicholas, something I've been reading about recently is direct kinetic energy attacks on Americans and the injuries that they sustain as a result of these kind of weapons. They're kind of secret and hidden, and I have some various links to put up because thank you, Susan, by the way. I want to acknowledge our viewers. Thank you very much. You must be a military brat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. Absolutely.
You remember the news story? Did you happen to see it? The one in Havana, Cuba, where there was some kind of attack near the American embassy, and they were having all kinds of, you know, dizziness and hearing problems. Some people actually had to go get hearing aids and had hearing loss and stuff. And we find out that it has to do with these acoustic sonic weapons that are being used. They were also used against American soldiers in Syria. The Russians were chasing them around at one point and used them on Americans. But what I want to mention here today that I want to bring light to, and I'm going to go ahead and put this up in the these couple of these stories up in the chat so people can you know, access them. What I want to mention is that the Pentagon, I heard this on the news and read several stories on it, briefed Congress, or at least the heads of Congress, maybe the top 8 people in Congress, about an investigation they were doing, but they didn't actually nail it down and say, this is an injury that the military is having, and now how do they claim it with a VSO as and get VA medical care for all these issues that are coming up with acoustic weapons. So that's what I want to chat about just a little bit. I'm going to get the Syria link up here, and we could talk about this. And how do we, I mean, these weapons are used to like knock out GPS and things like that, you know, and they've been used for years, but now they're being used against people, physically against people. And, you know, even in civilian life, this is going on. So not even just in war settings. But here's the 3 different, I put them up in the chat, 3 different things. There's the Syria story, the Cuba story, and some stuff about the VA. And, you know, because I know that they're going to land on my doorstep, Nicholas.
Well, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. I think honestly, I'm like we just talked about military brats. My father served in Vietnam. My brother served in the first Gulf War. They have experienced things, and through that experience, and even you know, my experience with the air war, you know, I know that sometimes, you know, it's difficult to get some of these claims forward in their initial phases, right? There's always that, okay, Agent Orange for my brother, you know, chemical warfare. It's taken years sometimes for the VA to recognize some of these claims, and I can see where it's good to be at the forefront right now, talking about this right now, because we can't waste any time, right?
Well, 40 people were affected down in the embassy down in Cuba. You know, it wasn't like it was just, you know, it was one attack. We see people stumbling around, having hearing and dizziness and unsteady gait and visual disturbances. And maybe they don't even initially recognize it. I mean, this is a weird one to me, you know.
Well, it's probably that weirdness is exacerbated by us being in Los Angeles. I mean,
well, you have a point. Yeah. I mean, you know, you don't know what kind of dizziness you got going on in LA.
there's a kinetic attack driving on the 405 every day. I mean, but yeah. At least it means we can understand what our active duty servicemen and women are experiencing, and you being in the position of VSO, you get to advocate that the veteran is heard and the claims get through and the benefits received. So that's really good stuff. I'm glad that we're talking about it, Gayle.
Well, I just want to put it out there because I truly want, somebody to hear this and get ahead of it.
Right.
Instead of people suffering and not be able to get that, what we call primary evidence about something. I guess in this situation, it's probably even more important that you document the time and the location and who else was there. Because if other people all had problems, 40 people in Havana, Cuba, and they know this happened, it would help if you document things together that as a group this happened. It's not a class action suit, but you know what I mean.
No, but you have to have the documentation, and the more people involved in it can help the powers that be see that healthcare will be needed. Potentially for the rest of that veteran or veteran's life or service member's life, they'll need to receive the right health care and everything else they need to move through life. So it's very important stuff. It's a shame that it's taken years and years for some of these things to get through with previous conflicts and wars.
Even the United States of America actually asked a few Cubans, small amount, I think it was less than 10 anyway, to leave the United States as a result of all this going on, this attack on Americans in Havana. So even that kind of documentation about they were asked to leave. Why? Because this event happened and they were asked to leave by our government. Now that at least helps to verify a lot of different steps about the fact that the event actually happened, when it happened, and to how many people who witnessed and were affected by it. All of that stuff matters so much. Yeah. So, well, I don't know. We're getting down to the end of the wire here. Can you imagine? Didn't we have a great guest today?
Absolutely. Absolutely a great guest today. So glad Rocio was here with us today.
Man, me too. Let's have her back. Well, anyway, so I guess what we talk about, wrap and recap or something like that, maybe?
Well, we got a little bit of time. I don't know.
Let's just chat it up.
SPRs or something. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, FDRs, Code of Federal Regulations, man. That's a list. I'm
okay. ST. I was thinking about something else.
ST. Oh, not ST.
STRs. I'm good. So that means I can enter the girls' system. That's the GI.
That's girls.
That I can now enter because my STRs came out there.
There's no end to this. We need to get combat pay for this show. You know what I'm saying? Or at least have it be a claimable thing. You know what I mean? Because I mean, we should be service connected for this show, and everybody who watches it too.
Well, I think we are service connected.
Yeah, well, we are. Yeah, that's right. Well, you know what? We're about ready to start opening up that, like Dr. Braverman always says, well, the VA never really closed. But people, there are doors that are locked. There are offices that, we don't have access to because of the pandemic. And boy, the VA has just done a bang-up job with regard to the vaccine. And is it your understanding, this is what I think, just please correct me if I misstate, but I think vaccinations are open to everyone at all ages who are VA connected in some manner, whether caregivers or family even, I believe. Not all the kids, because the vaccine isn't available for kids yet. I don't think. Maybe down to 15 or something, but not younger.
You know what I think? I think I'm looking at it because, of course, I'd like my daughter to get vaccinated. If she'd like to, if that's her choice, if she'd like to, I'd like that.
I think good age-wise. I think She's 16, you said?
She's 16. She's 16.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had a grandson, 15, that got one.
Okay. So, you know, it's interesting to look into that and check into that. And even as a veteran, see what's open, what options open for me to have my daughter vaccinated on my side of things. So that's something I'm going to be looking into soon. MC just told us we got 5 minutes left, Gayle. So maybe that's, you know, I guess takeaways. I mean, what was your takeaway from the show today?
Well, my biggest thing is something that I said my own self. Of course, I learned an awful lot from our guest, and I was just sitting there just listening, going, wow, 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 does she know a lot about this subject? But I think the thing that I've learned the most is the point that military sexual trauma can be about involvement with a civilian or somebody outside of the military. You know, military sexual trauma doesn't mean that you were had a traumatic incident with somebody else who was also in the military. It means that you were in the military and you had a problem with someone while you were in active duty military. So that was, you know, it seems kind of obvious after I hear about it. You know, I think, well, of course, that makes sense. But I didn't realize it until I went to that Arizona symposium, and I'm just
Marilyn Moore.
Yeah, everybody's congratulating us on the MST thing. You know, I mean, you know, it's not. You know, here I was so cautious about talking about it, and Kathy too. Great, good info. Thank you, Kathy. You know, and I was so cautious, and I'm so happy to see that the people watching the show are happy in our coverage, you know, that we brought forth information and support rather than tragic stories. You know, what about you? What were you thinking about as we did the show today?
Well, I know, you know what, I mean, having this platform, you know, I think my takeaway was, you know, just, you know, I can't help but think about the male veteran out there, having been around male veterans that have experienced MST. And I remember something Rocio mentioned about women in the events like the bingo night and things of women needing other women and being around other women as they experience things, and how much that means. And I can only think the same thing about the male veteran, and just, you know, speaking of the male veterans out there, about us holding space for each other. I know we do have camaraderie in some ways, but I think opening that space up again and dropping our guard somewhat when it comes to some of this stuff, that way we can have our fellow veterans open up and share veteran to veteran about these things, and we can hold space for each other as the male veteran and work through anything, any challenge. As we're seeing women vets on point. Women vets on point. And all of the things you all are doing, it just inspires me to advocate for similar things for the male veteran as we move forward, particularly to hold space and be there for veterans experiencing PTSD and MST on the male side of the fence. Well,
that's the deal. Veterans, peer support. We're there for each other. We can talk about these things. We can help each other get to therapy or the right people, you know, but it's nice when somebody can actually say, oh, I had this issue happen, you know, in the military. What do? I don't know where to go. I've been drinking. I've been taking drugs. Maybe they're homeless because of it. I mean, hypervigilance is a common thing, always feeling like somebody's going to get them, you know, kind of thing. I mean, this is a great thing to talk about all this. Well, they're going to get us. I
feel like that anyway. Well, I just spend my life feeling like they're trying to get me, you know, but it's only exacerbated by these other things.
That's right. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That's it for this week of Voice of the Veteran. Thank you so much for Nicholas and I and you joining us today.
Yes.
For our 20th show. Our 20th show, Nicholas. Wow.
Thank you so much, Rocio Palmero, for being with us today. Women Vets on Point. And thank you. This has been a great show, and I appreciate it, Gayle.
I love doing this show with you, Nicholas. Let's keep doing a few more. What do you say? Well,
I don't know, Gayle. I have so many other things going, so many other commitments now that my STRs have come back.
That's right, your STR. That's right. You know, I mean, actually, it's just, I don't know. I think we're going to run out of subjects to cover at the VA. There's certainly we covered it all, right? We're just all done. Yeah, right.
I'm dedicated to the veterans, so I'm just grateful to be here and have a platform to speak and advocate in whatever way we can.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next Sunday on Voice of the Veteran, or watch it on YouTube. It's all recorded for you to see at any time. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
See you next week.